I am live. Wonderful. So I am contemplating changing the name of my podcast because it's too hard to find with the current title. I'm stubborn. I like it, but I want to entertain different names that it could be that could be better used, that could help me better via search find the people that I want to help with it. So I'm going to use ChatGPT, specifically the voice function as far as it'll go today. I did have a long conversation with it earlier about different university programs I'm thinking of entering. So we'll see. We shall see how far I can get today with the ChatGPT free version that I am currently using. I know I could upgrade, but I like to show you the things you can do without the paywall. And to do that, I have to be on the free version. So here we go. Let's see what happens. This is just an Android app. The app is free. The voice function is free with limited time. Hi there.
How's it going?
It's going good. I need your help with a marketing decision.
Sure. What kind of marketing decision are you trying to make?
Okay, so my podcast name is called Podcast to Connect, and because the word podcast is in it, when people search for it, it is really difficult to find because there's so many podcasts with the name podcast in it. So I need help in coming up with a new name that is both searchable and actually answers the question of what we're helping people with. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. A more unique name could definitely help with searchability. What specific themes or topics does your podcast focus on? That might help inspire a new name.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to hone in on. It's constantly growing and changing, but in a nutshell, it's about using your podcast to connect with others.
Got it? Since your podcast is about using podcasts for connection, how about names that reflect that idea? Something like Connect Through Podcasting or Podcast Connections. We could also think about playful or catchy names that hint at networking or relationships. What do you think?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't want to use the word podcast in it anymore because that's the problem in search right now. So I need a name that it can say marketing, but the word podcast is it's just bad. So I need to use something that doesn't have marketing in it, or at least not in the beginning. Like right now, the full title is Podcast to Connect Non-Pushy Podcast Marketing. Maybe if I read off some of the titles of the episodes, that would help you. It would help you help me hone in on some keywords. What do you think?
Absolutely. Sharing some episode titles would be really helpful. It'll give me a better sense of your focus and tone. Go ahead.
All right, so I've got the titles on the screen here. The Power of Emotions in Social Media Storytelling. How to talk to 3 podcast audiences on social media. How can a podcast benefit your business? Polish your podcast brand to grow your audience. Content versus personality. What makes your podcast stand out? Audience growth injection for podcasts. Add podcast metadata for audience growth. Follow the life of your podcast social media post. Treating your podcast like a comic book, not a novel. Podcast trust changes fast forward work relationships. Wow, that's a one I need to work on. Humor in podcasting. Is a podcast a relationship? How do podcast listeners engage with us? What kind of podcast? Okay, the ones I mentioned first are more representative of what the podcast is about now. So I would start at, I lost you.
Thanks for sharing those titles. They give a great sense of your focus on storytelling, audience engagement, and branding. Since you want to avoid using podcast or marketing, how about something like Connect and Engage or Audience Amplifier? You could also consider the Connection Factor or Engagement Essentials. Do any of these resonate with you?
No, because I don't think that's going to be what people are searching for when they search on Google or in their podcast app or in YouTube. Do you know what I mean? So I need words that people are going to search for when they're trying to fill that need.
That makes sense. We want to think about keywords that people are actually searching for. Based on your topics, how about names like Audience Connection Blueprint, Social Storytelling Hub, or Engage Your Audience? These incorporate elements that might be more searchable while reflecting the content you provide. What do you think?
Okay. My first reaction to Social Storytelling Hub is kind of fun, but I'm not sure if people would be searching for any of those words. Like, what do you envision they would search for that in the term Social Storytelling Hub?
Social Storytelling Hub suggests a place where people can learn about using storytelling on social media. But you're right, those specific terms might not be commonly searched. People might look for phrases like engaging audiences, building connections, or storytelling strategies. We could explore names that incorporate those ideas, like engage and connect strategies or audience connection playbook. Do any of those resonate more?
No, I still think those are things that marketers like. I think those are things that marketers like because they sound nice, but I don't think it's what people are actually searching for. For example, when people search for stuff on how to promote and share their podcast, what words are they using? I think they're using more promotion than they are audience growth. Although I use audience growth a lot. Do you see what I mean? There's such a disconnect. Uh-oh.
Yes, I understand. It sounds like you're looking for more practical and straightforward terms that potential listeners would use in their searches. Words like promote, share, grow, connect, and strategy might be more effective. How about names like Podcast Promotion Hub, Share Your Podcast, or Grow Your Podcast Network? These directly address what people might be searching for when they want to promote their shows. What do you think of these options?
Share Your Podcast, maybe. But here's the other
Share
problem.
Your Podcast is simple and direct, which can be very effective. It clearly communicates the focus on promotion and connection. Would you like to brainstorm some variations or taglines to go along with it? Or do you want to explore more names?
In a minute, I want to do that first thing that you mentioned, but I want to explore this a little bit more because although my company and my podcast are primarily podcast based, I do offer a range of media services. So it's not just podcasting. So if I had a podcast that was Share Your Podcast, but I also offered supportive YouTube and social media and newsletter services, would that turn off those, like, not turn off those people, but would that be helpful if I had episodes about those supporting mediums? Or would that be off topic?
Having a podcast called Share Your Podcast, while also discussing supporting mediums like YouTube, social media, and newsletters, could actually be beneficial. It positions you as a resource for broader media promotion, which can attract a wider audience. You could focus on how those platforms enhance podcast promotion and connection, making it relevant. To keep it cohesive, you might consider episodes that highlight how each medium can work together. This way, your content remains valuable to both podcasters and those interested in other forms of media. Would that approach work for you?
I like this because it is still podcast focused, even if it is video podcast. Sometimes, like what I'm doing now with this live event, although this isn't going, live stream. This isn't going into a podcast anymore because there's such a visual element to the AI episodes. But okay, so let's go back to what you asked me. The last question you asked me. You asked me if I wanted to go into more about Share Your Podcast. What was the question you asked exactly?
I was wondering if you'd like to brainstorm some variations or taglines to go along with Share Your Podcast. This could help clarify the focus of your podcast and how it relates to your broader media services. Would you like to explore that? Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Hello?
you like to discuss next?
Well, share your podcast. I like that idea because I think that is stuff that people might be searching for. But again, it has the podcast word in the title, which is something I'm trying to avoid. If I want to include something like media presence or online project, God, what would people be searching for? Like, how do I promote my...
If you want to avoid the word podcast, but still convey the idea of sharing and promoting, you could consider names like Share Your Media or Boost Your Media Presence. Another option could be Share Your Project, which is broad enough to cover various media types. How do those sound to you?
Boost your media presence. Is there a simpler word we could use for presence? Project?
Sure. How about Boost Your Media Reach or Boost Your Media Profile? Both keep it simple and clear. What do you think? Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
I didn't say anything. Okay, we're going to stop. Okay, so the takeaway so far is that my two favorite titles that it gave me is... why is that still there? There we go. Okay. Sorry, this is my first time using Restream, so that was awkward. The two ones that I like so far are Share Your Podcast and Boost Your Media Reach or Media Presence. I like the term media presence better, but again, I'm trying to use terms that people are actually typing in, not just things that I think sound nice, which is really difficult, especially when you're making the logos and you're repeating it out loud in interviews and different kinds of things. You really want it to sound nice, not just be like everyday terms. But I want it to be usable. I want it to be findable. And right now, it's just a nightmare to have people find podcasts to connect, which really angers me because I think it rolls off the tongue. Podcast to connect. Podcast to connect. And it looks really cute. Can I show you the logo? Maybe. If I can find it. There it is. Again, first time using this software. So, here it is. Not showing. Yeah. I mean, it's so succinct. It's just a nightmare within apps and trying to Google it. It just doesn't come up. It just doesn't. Connect via podcast, connect with your podcast. Maybe putting podcasts at the end, like Share Your Podcast. Maybe that would help. But in everything that goes with rebranding, I don't want to do that until I know it's definitely the right thing to switch to it. I used to change names very frequently, and even though I still do, I don't change them as frequently as I want to or as I used to, because it is such a pain to redo everything. It's not as hard as you think, but it's harder than you think. Anyway, so Share Your Podcast and Boost Your Media Reach or Boost Your Media Presence. I like Boost. I've never used Boost in a podcast name before. And this is a very action-oriented podcast. It's like, here I'm showing you this, here do this. Here I'm experimenting with this. Yeah, try this part out. Like, so it's very action-oriented. So I like having an action word in the beginning. And I like it being result-driven boost versus the share. It's like, yeah, you're sharing it, but nothing's happening. But the boost is something's happening. So I'm leaning towards the word boost. Boost your podcast? No, that sounds silly. Boost your media presence. Yeah, I got to think about that one. I'm going to hang this Post-it, which is where I put it, at the bottom of my weekly calendar so that I'll stare at it for a few days. I'm not going to make any big decisions until, and I do have a digital calendar too, but for my general outline, I have the paper calendar because if something's not in front of me, I will forget to do it. That's how I roll. You can get more information and tips and experiments over at Chatty and Me, ChattyandMe, chattyandme.substack.com. That is the newsletter. It is absolutely free. And there's a bunch of other episodes with different kinds of marketing things you can do, as well as daily life stuff like cooking with Chatty, using it as an anxiety coach. All right, thanks so much for joining me for this. If you have any ideas, let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much. See you next time.